what is the best way to negotiate so you can get that home of your dreams? Jacques Munro from Munro Realty is here now. Jacques, welcome. Walk us through the process of putting in an offer on our home.
Well, it really depends on the circumstances also. It depends. If you have a lot of competition, for example, you absolutely want to make the offer as competitive as possible. That would entail having a letter of pre-qualification from a bank or a lender. That would be crucial irrespective of the circumstance. But let's say that you have a property that you have multiple buyers interested in and also competing for. So you want to make your offer as clean as possible. You always have default contingencies. So, for example, you can have a provision 10 days to inspect the home to make sure you're getting what you think you're getting. But at least the initial offer should be very clean, very simple, very understandable, and very appealing, again, if you're competing.
So you say appealing, though. What makes an appealing offer?
Yeah. Good question, Jen.
That's an excellent question. And so I would say a closing date within 30 days, oftentimes. Well, there's a little bit of homework that your agent can do for you, too. In other words, contact the seller's representative and see exactly what are the important points for the seller. So, and I was speaking with Daphne the other day. For example, there is one inexpensive way, and it costs you absolutely nothing, but just to show strength. And that way would be a large earnest money down payment. So in other words, this is money that's fully refundable to you, but it shows strength in your offer. Because what it says is, look, here is my offer. If I don't do what I say I'm going to do, then basically you can have this money. So if the money is 10 cents, it's not overly reliable. But if it's 5% of the offer price, that means something.
So basically it means if you have a high escrow amount that you're offering in your negotiation or in your offer, that's showing they're not playing games. You're really serious about
Exactly
this.
so.
Because the consequences of that is you lose the money, right?
Yeah, you do. But I mean, obviously, the thing is this is more psychological than anything else. You're representing a buyer. You want to make sure that, number one, they know what they're getting a reasonable value. So in other words, if things come to pass where it's not what they expect, that they should be able to get their earnest money back anyway. So, for example, you have 10 days in which to do a home inspection. Let's say the property isn't as good as you expect. When you're first emotionally, involved in the home, you see the home, it's a great home, you fall in love. But then, afterwards, it sets in and you go and you see that, guess what? The AC unit is 30 years old and it's on its last leg, or there are plumbing issues or whatever else the circumstance is. The earnest money you get anyway, you get it back. You basically give your notice, provided that it be timely, customarily within 10 days, and you get your earnest money back. Or let's say that something happens financing-wise, where you don't qualify for financing again. So long as you're within your time frames, you get your earnest money back. So it's a way that doesn't cost you anything, and you show strength.
But that's different than your down payment, correct?
It is much. The earnest money will typically go towards your closing proceeds. So insofar as you were to default, theoretically, then it would be separate from your down payment.
Got it.
So it's good faith money. Sometimes, and many years ago you would hear it called that. Not so much anymore. But basically, that's what it is. It's to show good faith. In other words, here, you accept my offer. I'm going to do everything I promise to do, and if I don't, this is yours.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about calculating the offer. Is there a formula? Is there a mathematical way that we can come up with a?
I don't believe it.
No?
Jen, yeah, and actually Daphne was asking me this the other day. I just don't buy into it. You can have a bunch of statistics that can show and, maybe have an idea. You hear 5%, 10%, so as not to offend a seller. But before you even undertake to even make an offer or negotiate an offer, you better kind of have a good idea about what the property is worth. So, if anybody can ask anything, for anything, including homes. And so, you want to make sure that, you understand where the market is. And that will kind of guide you a little bit as to where you should make the offer. There are other stats that you can do. So, for example, you can say, okay, well, in a certain area, or within a subdivision, or within a general area, what was the list price, what was the sales price? And then your agent can argue for you and, basically make these arguments. Hey, well, you know what? Most of these homes in this area, they sell for 3 to 5%. Therefore, our offer is a reasonable offer. But really, the key thing is know what the circumstances are. Do you have competing offers? If you do, then throw away the 3%, 5%, 10% rule. It doesn't mean anything. You're not getting the house if you follow it.
So bottom line is do your research, which is the rule when it comes to any type of deal making.
Absolutely.
Smart shoppers,
Yep.
do your research. The
Yep.
most important thing.
Absolutely.
So next question. Can you negotiate the price after the inspection period?
Yeah, that's called the second bite of the apple.
And Jacques loves that bite of the apple.
That's true, but unfortunately, they just changed. The AAR just changed the boilerplate language of our
AR's
contracts.
Arizona Real Estate Association?
Yes,
Sorry,
Arizona
just
Association of
to educate
Realtors.
myself.
Of
Thank you.
Realtors. So, yep, exactly. And so they're the ones who are responsible. Well, there's a committee, and they basically brokers and experts get together, the attorneys, and formulate a new contract. And from time to time, that contract is revised. Back
So what
prior
they-
to, or back in the 80s, for example, you would have a 13-day grace period. So in other words, if a party to the agreement or the buyer or seller didn't do what they were supposed to do, the party who was not in default would have to come forward and say, okay, well, you were supposed to do this today. You didn't do it. Now you got 13 days to do it. That went away gladly.
So what has changed now? You were talking about in terms of after inspection. So what did they change?
Thank you for bringing me back on track, Daphne. There used to be things that were agreed to in advance. So we would call them seller warranted items. So, by virtue of the seller accepting an offer or after negotiations, offer counteroffer, the seller would be contractually required to ensure that things were in working condition. So, for example, if you do your home inspection as the buyer and a light switch doesn't work, even, it's a minor thing. Normally it could be a light bulb, but sometimes it's electrical. That it's a problem, and it could be an expensive problem. The seller doesn't have the right to say, no, take it or leave it, we're not doing it. Before February, they didn't have that right by using the contracts that existed up until then. But now the contracts we use, the seller does have that right.
So the seller can tell you, no, we're not going to fix it.
Exactly.
Really?
Yep.
Ooh, thank goodness I bought my house before that.
Yeah, right before that.
So then this gets me to my next question here. All right. Seller gets another offer. I mean, this happened to me. I'm talking from personal experience.
Yeah.
We found the house that we bought within an hour of it hitting market. We put in an offer. We were motivated. They accepted. The next day, they got an all cash offer from an investment company that was higher than our offer. And they did everything in their power to try and get us to pull out of that offer.
It's so difficult too, because even the agent on the other side of a transaction has an ethical responsibility to ensure all parties are treated fairly. And so, but at the same time, there's a competing duty, and you have a fiduciary duty to your client, which means getting them more money, as much money as they can get. Mm-hmm. But it's a risky proposition, and it's my belief, just play it straight. Mm-hmm. I had the same exact circumstance. Where the backup offer was significantly more than the original offer, or actually the contract that was in place. And so, advising our client, it's like, well, this is what the situation is. And it was $20,000 more for the backup offer. So what that did is it did serve the best interest of our client, because we said just agree to do nothing. Even stuff that could have been reasonable to ask for. For example, actually, and I contradict myself on that. That's not true, because actually we did do the termite treatment, and only because termites, there was a warranty that was already in place. But other than that, what that did, it did serve our interest, because it emboldened us to say no to everything. And the buyers were posturing, and they were asking for a bunch of crazy stuff as well. And so, but ultimately, they did follow through, and we're closing on that transaction in 2 weeks. So it does happen, but once the seller is bound, the seller is bound.
So you just got to kind of bite the bullet, and if you want the house, then
as a buyer, it's not in a very good place, because you can ask for everything you want, but they don't have to do anything.
All right. Well, if you want to get a hold of Jacques, you can always find his tips on our Facebook page, or go to our website where we'll have more information on how to negotiate a home. Just go to thesmartshoppershow.com.